first thing I do is apologize. The moment my phone finishes booting and I can respond to her message from hours ago, I tell her, I'm sorry. I wrap my pea coat tighter around my shoulders, pull my beanie further over my ears, and wave goodbye at the fisherman who charged my phone as he slips under the bridge at the mouth of Diversey Harbor. I draw my knee to my chest and rest my head on it, my fingers pulling absent-mindedly at the shreds of tights covering my scrapes and bruises. 20 minutes of meditating in front of my favorite view of the skyline, and my heart is still racing. But I have to make sure my ex isn't afraid for me while I check my body for cuts and wounds beyond the aches I can already feel. What did you do? She asked me again. To give some context, 3 or 4 hours ago, I had sent a message. I might be doing something very stupid, and I'm getting a weird feeling about it, and maybe it's going to be fine, but just in case, I love you. And then my phone died before she could reply. I really need you to tell me what's going on. I can picture her in her apartment an ocean away, wondering about what kind of terrible, reckless decision I've made now, wondering how far I've pushed my literally broken and injured body today. If I'm being honest, reckless isn't the wrong way to describe me, but I prefer calculated risk taker. When I encounter what a rational human being would consider a red flag, I like to consider all possible outcomes. What emotional, physical, mental dangers exist? What are the odds of me avoiding a single obstacle? Multiple? All of them? I'm not seeking the thrill of losing control. The satisfaction comes from pulling up at the very last second from a situation spiraling into disaster. I've always had an unreasonable sense of self-confidence that I'll survive just about anything. I explained how the evening started to her. The initial setup, drinks with people who I hadn't spoken to in years, didn't seem problematic. Red flag 1. Nate, the man who had harassed me and once tried to drive 11 hours to see me after our relationship ended, would be present. He was volatile. Throw in a few buffer individuals and one who actively disliked me, it wasn't quite a minefield, but it was no longer simple. My exit should be smooth, I thought. I knew the city better than any of those tourists. At best, the evening would have been a fun outing and satisfied my curiosity about whether any of us, including me, had changed. But it could be awkward, or at worst, slightly dangerous. I called an Uber with 1% battery left on my phone. Red flag. Then I found out my main buffer wasn't going to be there. Red flag. You know that foreboding feeling, that raise the hairs on the back of your neck feeling, that doom is about to rain down upon me feeling? That was me. Huge red flag. But not enough warnings to make me turn around and go home. Not even when it was only drunk Nate at the bar. I chose to order a beer and be civil, even when he slurred remarks like, I heard you've been sleeping with more women lately. I could change that. The sloppy wink that followed was not appealing. I miscalculated. I didn't consider how much my sprained hip flexor meant limited mobility, meant too many attempts to break away from Nate's drunk hands, meant brick slicing my skin, meant tears, his, not mine. He cried about his mother dying, and I took the chance to push him into a cab. The details are pouring out of me without interruption from her, and I wonder if she's gone to work or for a run. The sun shines in Taiwan, and post-midnight ramblings from Chicago might be less important. But I need to tell her about the rest, how the tights ripped, how the other bruises on my ribs and hips bloomed. sitting by the harbor on the rocky steps. I couldn't imagine another person I could tell the entire story to, who would give me the kind of support I needed. She had the background knowledge of my particular set of vulnerabilities and the traumas that created those scars. So when I say that John found me limping by the green line, she knows why I can't control my heart rate, why I'm losing the thread of the story, jumping from detail to detail without the usual humorous asides and my even sprinkling of self-deprecating and cocky remarks. She knows about John. In college, John raped me. I didn't press charges. I barely told anyone at the time. I didn't go to therapy, I ended the relationship, and I moved on. And this isn't a story about rape and sexual assault, and I'm not letting him make me a victim. I transitioned from absolute compartmentalization to being a survivor. Or at least that's what I like to tell myself. She knows that the first time I saw John 2 years after the assault, I ran into an alley, vomited, and had a panic attack. I froze. I felt small again and vulnerable, felt his body overcoming mine, and I lost control of myself. I hated it. I realized that most people would hate that situation, but I had this visceral hatred of it, this disdain for me failing to keep it together. My only comfort that night was that I didn't run while I was still in his line of sight. Pride is my greatest sin, and years of learning self-sufficiency from my immigrant parents had instilled in me a strong American pick yourself up by your bootstraps attitude. The early independence that came with translating or taking care of small matters to compensate for overly worked parents, that desire to show them that they didn't have to worry about me or spend time making decisions for me, that had transformed me into someone who offered support and help to anyone, but was too stubborn to ask for it, too stubborn to even tell people that a problem existed. She knows that I can't stand even the possibility of pity, that sympathy is a dirty word when applied towards me. Empathy I can handle, but pity adds insult to injury. After I limped towards the green line with the hobble step of a pirate, I smelled a familiar gag-inducing cologne that I hadn't smelled in nearly 2 years. I whirled around as John caught my arm. His face hovered above mine, close enough that I could smell the stink of his favorite brand of scotch on his breath. Looks like you liked it rough with that pretty boy. He pinned my wrist. If I had only known, he had me trapped. Add in 40 pounds and 8 inches on me combined with my injury, he was gonna get whatever he wanted. I cursed myself for not carrying my knife and being injured and not getting an Uber. I felt my tights rip as he pressed me against the train supports. I closed my eyes. Then there was a yell and laughter and the sound of a drunken body hitting a car. John was startled and left the scene. I dragged myself behind a car, silently thanked the drunken strangers, and crouched down to have a panic attack. So I'm a fucking idiot, I say. She doesn't let the victim blaming slide and tells me, stop saying that, it's not true at all. Her forcefulness snaps me out of my recriminations, and I drag myself to my feet, ready to step my way home. The normally 15 to 20 minute walk takes me over an hour as I stop and clutch at bike racks and light poles on my way. Because bright, impossibly stubborn human that I am, I decided not to take painkillers for my hip strain. And that cold breeze has tightened the geriatric joint that rests beneath my 20-something skin. It hurts like hell, but it's a clean pain, the kind that brings clarity in its sharpness. When the physical world is narrow to the slow steps that will take you home, you can regain a little pride. I chose the emotional pain of telling her. I chose the physical pain of walking. Call it masochism maybe, but I needed it. When I arrive home, I let the hot water in the shower wash away the grime of the evening until my heartbeat slows again, until I can believe her when she calls me beautiful. I don't feel whole, but I'm not shattered. They haven't rendered me useless, and asking her for support hasn't made me weak. I form a crescent on my bed, close my eyes, and measure the spaces between my heartbeats until dawn.